I swear I didn't see her until it was almost too late. The sun was blazing over my ranch that afternoon, the sky a perfect blue with only a few lazy clouds drifting by. I was in my old John Deere tractor backing it up to move a fresh load of timber through the gate I had just painted bright fire engine red. I liked the boldness. The color popped against the beige dust of the Arizona ground and the rustic charm of my wooden fencing. To me, it was just a gate. But to Marlene Crowley, the HOA president, it was a declaration of war. And that's exactly what she shouted as she stormed onto my property like she owned the whole town. "You're violating community standards," she screeched, red-faced, and flailing a printed document in her hand. I had barely turned off the engine when I saw her, sprinting toward the gate, one heel stuck in the dirt, arms windmilling. I thought she might trip, but instead she did something much worse. She stood directly in front of the moving tractor. I yanked the brake just in time. The front wheel nudged the edge of the gravel where her toes were planted, and I swear her eyes nearly bugged out of her head. I opened the cabin door slowly, stepping down with a confused expression. "Marlene," I said calmly, "what in the world are you doing?" She didn't answer. She was trembling. Her fingers were gripping that paper so hard it looked like it might tear into flames. And then she screamed something I'll never forget. "Repaint the gate or I'll sue you for attempted murder." That was when my dog Duke came bounding out, barking like crazy, and that's where this whole mess started. But before I tell you what happened after that tractor almost rolled over the most annoying woman in Arizona, let me take you back to how it all began. Because none of it was supposed to happen. And maybe, just maybe, if someone had shown Marlene a little more kindness in her life, she wouldn't have turned into the monster I met that day. By the way, where are y'all watching from? Drop it in the comments. I love knowing how far stories like mine travel. It all started 6 weeks before the tractor incident. My name's Jake Harmon. I'm 48 years old, a retired firefighter, and I live on a 20-acre ranch in the outskirts of Prescott, Arizona. I bought the land 2 years ago after inheriting a small fortune from my late uncle, and I've been slowly building my dream out here. Quiet, peaceful, and far from the city noise. My place, not part of any HOA, that's right. I double-cheated before I bought the land. This property was exempt. I had the legal documents, title records, and even confirmation from my realtor. So imagine my confusion when a woman named Marlene Crowley showed up at my gate one morning with a clipboard in one hand and a ruler in the other. "This fence," she said without introducing herself, "is 3 inches too high." I blinked. "Good morning to you too. I'm Jake." "I'm Marlene, president of the Clear Ridge HOA. You've received 3 violation notice already." "No, ma'am, I haven't received anything, and I'm not part of Clear Ridge. My property line starts where the HOA ends." She narrowed her eyes. "That's what you think." She left without another word, and that's when the letters began showing up. At first I ignored them. Most were printed on cheap paper and didn't even include a return address. Then came the knocks. Usually around 6:30 a.m., HOA agents, clipboard kids, and even a teenager with a drone tried to survey my property. Now let me introduce some of the characters that will come into play. First there's Ellie. She's my niece, my late sister's daughter. She moved in with me after college didn't quite work out. Bright, spunky, and full of TikTok energy. Ellie was always filming something, usually Duke chasing squirrels. Then there's Rye, my neighbor and old buddy from my firefighter days. He owns a smaller plot next door and has his own run-ins with the HOA. And finally, there's Miss Dolores, an 82-year-old who's lived in the area since her family arrived in the 50s. She doesn't say much, but when she does, you listen. It was Dolores who warned me. "They'll come after you," she said one afternoon while feeding her chickens. Marlene doesn't like being told no. I laughed it off, but things got worse quickly. A week after that, I got a notice taped to my gate. Color violation, immediate repaint required. It listed a series of approved colors for fences and gates. All dull neutrals, gray mist, saddle beige, desert taupe. So naturally, I went to the hardware store and bought the brightest red I could find and painted it myself. It was Ellie's idea to film it for her followers. She added dramatic music and slow-mo shots of me painting, while Duke ran in circles. The video went viral. I didn't think it would matter, but that was the spark that lit Marlene's fuse. 3 days later, she marched up with 2 other board members, Gerald and Tanya. Gerald looked like a confused accountant. Tanya was filming everything with her phone like she was documenting a crime scene. "This is vandalism," Marlene snapped. "Nope," I said, sipping lemonade. "This is my land. Then you'll be hearing from our lawyers." I didn't say anything, but I went inside and pulled out my property deed, and I made 5 copies. The next day, I hand-delivered one to her porch. That's when the intimidation started. My mailbox disappeared. My trash bin was dumped and scattered across my driveway. Ellie's car got egged. Someone even tried to let Duke loose by unlatching the gate one night. Thankfully, I had installed a camera. I didn't catch faces, but I caught a silhouette. Short, stocky, possibly Marlene. Ellie was scared. I told her it would blow over. Then came the letter marked final notice. "We will be inspecting your property at 4 p.m. this Friday. Any non-compliance will result in fines and escalation to court proceedings." Ray came over that night, chewing on a toothpick. "They're poking the bear," he muttered. "I don't care about their bear," I said. "They don't have a leg to stand on." But part of me was worried. Could they actually sue? Could I lose the land over a painted gate? Ellie told me to post the deed online, so I did. I posted everything: deed, boundary maps, even a photo with my realtor. And then I painted the gate again, just to freshen it up. That Friday came fast. It was 3:58 p.m. when I heard the crunch of tires outside the gate. I was in my tractor already hauling wood to repair one of the sheds. I saw the HOA crew approaching. That's when it happened. Marlene didn't wait. She charged toward the gate like a bull, screaming something about defiance and disrespect. Gerald and Tanya hung back wide-eyed. I didn't know she'd come so close to the moving tractor. The engine rumbled, wheels creaked, and I was barely focused on her until I heard the scream. I turned my head and saw her standing directly in front of the path. I slammed the brake. Dust flew. My heart stopped and the tractor didn't stop fast enough. The wheel nudged the gravel right next to her shoe, so close that a puff of dirt hit her pant leg. She froze, mouth wide open, staring at me like I had just tried to end her life. "Murder!" she screamed. And that's when Duke came out, barking like a lunatic. I jumped down, hands raised. "Marlene, nobody's trying to hurt you. What are you doing?" But she didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. That was the moment everything shifted. I stood there, stunned. Ellie came running. Gerald and Tanya whispered furiously. And in the distance, sirens began to wail. The sheriff was coming. And all because of a red gate. The sheriff pulled up slow, his cruiser rolling to a stop right at the edge of my property line. Dust curled around the tires like steam rising from a pot. The second the engine shut off, the only sounds were Duke's barking, Ellie's frantic whispering, and Marlene's huffy breathing as she stood stiff beside the gate like a broken lawn ornament. Then the door swung open and out stepped Sheriff Bill Rohr. Now Bill wasn't some pencil pusher in a shiny badge. He was a grizzled Vietnam vet turned lawman, the kind of guy who could spot a lie faster than a hawk spots a field mouse. His presence brought a strange calm over the place, at least for me. Marlene, though, her face tightened like a lemon wedge. "Afternoon," he said, nodding toward me. "Jake, Sheriff," I replied, wiping the sweat from my brow. "Wasn't expecting company today." "I got a 911 call reporting an attempted vehicular assault," he said, his voice steady as ever. "That true?" Marlene shot forward like a bullet. "Yes, he tried to run me over with that machine. Look at it. Look at my shoes." Bill glanced at her dust-covered heels, then turned to the massive John Deere behind me. "It wasn't even running anymore. I was hauling timber," I explained. "Didn't even know she was on the property till she screamed." Ellie stepped forward, holding up her phone. "I got it on video," she said. "It's all recorded." Bill held out his hand. "Let's have a look." While Ellie queued it up, Gerald and Tanya hovered behind Marlene, suddenly quiet. Gerald looked like he wanted to disappear. Tanya was biting her lip. The video started. Me backing up the tractor, Marlene storming into frame, planting herself right in the path and me slamming the brakes hard. The tractor stopped just shy of her toes. Duke's barking rang through the audio. Marlene's scream echoed. Bill watched the whole thing twice. Then he handed the phone back to Ellie and slowly turned to Marlene. "Ma'am, it looks to me like you walked directly into the path of a moving vehicle." Marlene gasped. "He's dangerous." "No," Bill said firmly. "He's careful, and you're trespassing. I am the HOA president and this land." Bill cut in, pulling a document from his clipboard, is not under your HOA's jurisdiction. I've seen the property lines, I've seen the deed. Jake has every right to paint his gate bright pink if he wants to. A gasp from Tanya. Gerald audibly muttered, "Told you so." Marlene's face turned an impressive shade of purple. "This is outrageous. He's taunting us." Bill tilted his hat. "No, ma'am, you're provoking him, and I'd advise you to step off this property before I charge you with harassment." The air went still. Marlene looked like she might pass out, but she turned on her heel and stomped back toward the road, muttering all the way. Gerald and Tanya trailed behind like lost ducklings. I let out a slow breath, but Bill wasn't finished. He motioned for me and Ellie to follow him up to the porch. "Y'all got a minute?" "Of course," I said, still trying to steady my nerves. We sat down in the shade. Duke flopped by my boots. Finally, quiet. Bill took off his sunglasses. "Jake, I know you think you're in the clear. Legally you are, but Marlene Crowley isn't going to walk away just because the law says she should. That woman thrives on control and humiliation like today's. It'll push her into a corner. You watch your back." I nodded slowly. "You think she'll try something else?" "I'd bet my badge on it. She's not done." Bill stood up and looked down the drive where Marlene's sedan was now pulling away. "Keep that camera rolling and stay smart." We thanked him, and he left with a tip of his hat. Ellie turned to me the second he was out of sight. "What now?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just stared out at the gate, the big bright red gate. I had painted it as a joke, a statement. But now it felt like a flag on a battlefield. And the war, it seemed, was just beginning. The rest of the week passed with an eerie quiet. Ellie went back to editing her videos. Rye came by every afternoon with updates on the local gossip, and Miss Dolores dropped off a fresh pie with a note that read, "Never let a bully paint your gate." I laughed when I read it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. That feeling turned out to be right. It started when I found the gate open one morning. I always lock it. But there it was, swinging slightly in the breeze, latch undone. Duke was still safe in the yard, but there were tire marks in the dirt leading up to the barn. Fresh ones. Ellie had been out late with friends the night before. She didn't notice anything strange when she came back. I checked the cameras. The footage had been erased. Someone had wiped the drive. Now, I was officially on edge. I told Ray, and he offered to stay over the next few nights. "Just in case," he said, parking his truck behind the shed with a shotgun in his lap. Still, no one came back. No notes, no egged windows, just silence. Then late Sunday afternoon, Marlene showed up again. But this time she wasn't yelling. She was calm. Too calm. She came up the drive in a floral blouse and khakis, her hair pinned neat and tight. She carried a pie. Ellie answered the door. Can I help you?" Marlene smiled sweetly. "Is Jake home?" "I'd like to apologize. I was in the kitchen and heard the whole thing." Something felt wrong, but curiosity won. I stepped onto the porch. "Marlene, Jake," she said with syrupy kindness. "I've had some time to reflect. I realize I may have overreacted. I just want our community to be harmonious. Can we talk?" Ellie's eyes widened. I nodded once and motioned for her to stay inside. We walked out toward the gate. She handed me the pie. "Peach," she said, "from scratch." "I'm allergic to peaches." I lied. Her smile faltered. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know. You didn't ask." That's when she dropped the mask. Her smile faded, her voice lowered. "You think you're clever, but this gate, it's not over. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I will make this right." "Marlene," I said calmly, "go home." She stepped closer. "I don't play games." I met her gaze. "Neither do I." She spun around and marched back to her car, but before she got in, she turned and said something chilling. "You're not the only one who can move heavy machinery." Then she drove off. I stood there, frozen. What did that mean? That night, I called Bill. He promised to look into any recent equipment rentals under her name, but he also said, if she's planning something, it's not going to be subtle. And it wasn't. Because the next morning I woke to the sound of crashing metal. And when I ran outside, what I saw made my stomach drop. The red gate. It was gone, shattered, and parked in the middle of my pasture was a massive bulldozer, still idling, still warm. And that was only the beginning. The bulldozer sat like a mechanical monster in the middle of my land, yellow paint chipped, engine rumbling low, its front scoop tipped slightly down like it was nodding at me with menace. I didn't know whether to run toward it or run away. Ellie came bursting out of the house behind me, barefoot and holding her phone like a weapon. "Uncle Jake, what happened?" she shouted. I didn't answer at first. I was too focused on the gate, or what was left of it. Splinters littered the driveway like matchsticks. The hinges had been torn clean from the posts, and the concrete foundation cracked where the bulldozer's treads had chewed through. Someone had driven that thing straight through my front gate, crushed it, and parked it dead center in my property. Duke barked furiously from the porch, his fur bristling. I held out my hand to calm him. "Stay, boy." Ellie was already filming. "This is crazy. Who would do this?" But we both already knew the answer. "Marlene," I muttered. I walked slowly around the bulldozer, checking for any markings. There was a rental company logo painted in blue on the side panel. Buller Run Equipment, LLC. I made a mental note. The keys were still in the ignition. The cab door was open. Whoever drove it here had abandoned it in a hurry. That's when Rye pulled up. He jumped out of his truck like he'd heard a gunshot. "Jake?" I heard the noise all the way from my porch. "What in the devil happened?" I pointed. Ray's jaw went slack. "Good Lord." I walked to the house and dialed Sheriff Bill's number. He picked up on the second ring. "Roar, Bill?" "Someone rammed a bulldozer through my front gate." Silence. "Did you say bulldozer?" "Yes, it's still here, engine running. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't touch anything." He hung up. By now, a small crowd had gathered near the edge of my driveway. Neighbors from a few streets down, drawn by the commotion. A couple folks took pictures from afar. One woman was live streaming. Ellie zoomed in on the bulldozer with her phone. "I bet this gets more views than the Red Gate video." Ray shook his head. "Kid, we're in a war." Bill arrived just like he'd promised, lights flashing, tires crunching through gravel. He stepped out and walked straight to the bulldozer, one hand already flipping open his notepad. He didn't say a word until he finished walking the perimeter. Finally, he turned to me. "Rental company's name is Bull Run. I'll pull records, but if I had to guess..." "It's Marlene," I said. "She threatened me yesterday." "Got it on video?" he asked. Ellie raised her phone. Every word. Bill smirked. "Good girl." He radioed the station to run the rental logs. Meanwhile, I texted the hardware store I'd gotten the red paint from. They had cameras in the parking lot, and I figured it wouldn't hurt to see if Marlene had been in the area before this mess. An hour later, a tow truck came to haul the bulldozer away. Bill stayed behind with 2 deputies to file an official report. "Might want to get a new lock on your barn," he warned. "If she came in through the front gate with that thing, no telling what she'll try next." I nodded, but I didn't tell him that I was already planning something bigger, something she wouldn't see coming. The next few days were tense. I had a temporary gate installed using metal rods and old fencing I had behind the shed. Rye helped reinforce it with sandbags just in case. Marlene didn't show her face, but I could feel her watching. Ellie stayed in her room most of the time, editing a new video titled Our HOA Nightmare. She drove a bulldozer through our gate. She added dramatic music, shaky footage, and even a slow zoom on Marlene's twisted scowl from the previous video. Her followers doubled overnight. Meanwhile, I got a call from Buller Run Equipment. "Mr. Harmon, this is Steve from Bull Run. Just wanted to let you know the bulldozer was rented under the name Marlene Crowley. She used a company card from the Clear Ridge HOA. Can you send me that in writing?" He hesitated. "Well, I probably shouldn't, but yeah, I'll email it over." By evening, I had the document. The HOA had officially funded a bulldozer attack on my ranch. I forwarded it to Sheriff Bill, my lawyer, and to Ellie, who immediately posted a blurred version on her socials. Now the whole town knew. But what really tipped the scales was Miss Dolores. She showed up the next day leaning on her cane, wearing a sun hat that looked older than I was. She handed me a box. "Found this in my attic," she said. "From when the Crowleys first moved here. Thought you might want it." Inside were clippings, old meeting notes, and the original Clear Ridge HOA boundary map, yellowed with age but clearly marked. The line stopped 400 feet before my property. She smiled. "They've been trying to change the maps for years. You're the first one to fight back." I hugged her gently. "Thank you, Dolores. You're welcome, baby. Now, burn that map into their memory." I knew what I had to do. 2 days later, I filed a civil suit. The claim: property destruction, trespassing, emotional distress, and misuse of HOA funds. The lawsuit was served to the Clear Ridge HOA's main office and directly to Marlene's front door. Ray brought his lawn chair to my porch just to watch the moment. She stood there barefoot in her robe, reading the envelope like it was written in fire. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just stared at the porch with a look that chilled me to the bone. I knew then she wasn't going to take this to courtly, and I was right because that night my ranch lights flickered and died. And when I checked the electrical box, the wires had been cut clean. Deliberate. That was the last straw. I turned to Ray, who was already holding up a pair of bolt cutters. "Jake," he said with a grin, "I think it's time we paid the HOA office a little visit." I stared at him, then at the pitch-black road outside. I nodded once. "Let's roll." And that's how we ended that chapter. Two grown men in flannel shirts sliding into a dusty pickup truck at midnight, ready to strike back against a woman who thought she ran the town. But what we found at the HOA office, that changed everything. We rolled through the sleeping streets of Clear Ridge, with nothing but the headlights and the hum of Ray's old Chevy lighting the way. My jaw was clenched tight, hands resting on my knees as we drove, the night air thick with tension. Ray flicked his toothpick between his teeth. "You sure about this? She cut my power?" I said, staring ahead. "I'm sure." We turned into the office park where the Clear Ridge HOA had their little headquarters, a tan building with plastic columns and an American flag drooping off a rusty pole. The parking lot was empty, except for a single silver sedan. Ray pulled in without turning off the lights. "You think she's in there?" he asked. I nodded. "That's her car." We killed the engine. I stepped out of the truck slowly, flashlight in one hand, and a deep sense of dread in my chest. The place looked quiet. Too quiet. We walked up to the front door, locked, of course, but something felt off. "Check the side," I whispered. Ray rounded the corner while I peeked through the window. Inside, the lights were off, but there was movement. Papers on the floor, drawers hanging open. I ducked back just as Ray came running. Back doors cracked open. That wasn't just off, that was wrong. We slipped inside. The back room smelled like printer ink and cold coffee. The office was a mess. Filing cabinets tipped. Water spilled on the floor. A chair overturned. Whoever had been here wasn't looking for coffee. "Someone beat us to it," Ray muttered. I bent down and picked up a crumpled manila envelope. The label read, "Legal gate, color violations." Inside were copies of fines, notices, photos, all with my name on them. One paper caught my eye. A draft lawsuit against me dated 2 weeks ago, accusing me of harassment and community destabilization. It was unsigned. "Marlene was gearing up to sue you," Ray said, reading over my shoulder. "Man, she's really lost it." I was about to respond when we heard it. A thud from the front room. We both froze. Another thump. This one louder. Then a voice, faint, raspy. "Help." I motioned to Ray and we crept forward through the hall, my heart thudding against my ribs. We stepped into the front office. There, slumped against the copy machine, was Gerald. One eye swollen shut, lip bleeding, his shirt ripped at the collar. "Gerald." I rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "What happened?" He groaned. "They came in, took everything. Files, backups." "Who?" He blinked up at me, dazed. "Not Marlene. Some guy, big, bald, said she hired him to wipe everything." Ray was already dialing Sheriff Bill. "She went too far," Gerald whispered. "I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen." I looked around. Cabinets were empty, hard drives missing. It wasn't vandalism, it was a cover-up. Ray handed me the phone. "Bill wants to talk to you." I filled him in. Everything. The bulldozer, the threat, the break-in, Gerald's condition. Bill said he'd be there in 10. Gerald groaned again, tugging my sleeve. "She's hiding something, Jake, something big. HOA's broke. She's using member dues to pay for lawyers, bribes, equipment, bulldozers. She thought no one would notice." He coughed. "But now everyone's watching." The paramedics took Gerald away. Bill showed up with 2 more deputies, his face like stone. "Yeah," he said, "but this is different. She's trying to erase evidence. That's criminal." He walked over to the wall where a corkboard once hung. Only a single photo remained, tacked high in the corner. A black and white aerial shot of the neighborhood dated 2001. It showed the original boundaries. My property wasn't included. Proof, Bill said, snapping a photo. She's been faking documents for years. Ray shook his head. Man, what is wrong with this lady? She doesn't want to lose control, Bill said. And you just made her look powerless in front of everyone. He looked at me seriously. Jake, you need to prepare for the worst. I thought this was the worst. Bill glanced at the broken file cabinet. No, this was her panicking. Next time, she'll be ready. The next morning, Ellie's new video dropped. Within hours, it went viral. HOA gone mad. Bulldozer break-ins and lawsuits. She included clips of Gerald on a stretcher, my crushed gate, and even a few lines from Sheriff Bill at the scene. The comment section exploded. Locals came out of the woodwork. People who had been fined for wind chimes threatened over mailbox colors. One woman claimed Marlene fined her dead grandmother's house for having faded curtains. Suddenly, the world saw what we saw. The HOA was a joke, but Marlene, she wasn't laughing. That afternoon, a notice appeared on my door. Emergency HOA meeting, attendance mandatory. Signed Marlene Crowley, acting president. Ray snorted, acting like it's her White House. I'm going, I said. Ellie frowned. Are you serious? What if it's a trap? Exactly why I'm going. I grabbed my boots, pulled on my flannel, and told Ellie to stay put, but she followed anyway with her phone in hand. The HOA meeting was held in the community center, an ugly brick building with flickering lights and mismatched chairs. It was packed. Dozens of residents sat shoulder to shoulder whispering, clutching papers, whispering things like lawsuit and police. Some had their phones out. A few were live streaming. Then Marlene walked in, her hair perfect, her blouse crisp, but her eyes were wild. She walked straight to the front, cleared her throat, and banged the gavel. Let's begin. No one clapped. She looked around, stiff. First order of business, property violations and gate codes. As you all know, Mr. Harmon here isn't part of the HOA, someone shouted from the back. Marlene blinked. That is under review. No, it's not, I said, stepping forward. My deed proves it. The original HOA map proves it. And your own rental slip for the bulldozer proves you destroyed private property. Gasps. She tried to speak, but I kept going. You sent someone to erase files. You used HOA money for personal revenge. You assaulted my land, and now Gerald is in the hospital because of you. Enough, she screamed, slamming the gavel, but no one flinched. Then Ellie raised her phone high. We're live right now, she said. Over 20,000 people watch. Tell them why you drove a bulldozer through my uncle's gate. Marlene's eyes darted around. The crowd was silent. A bead of sweat rolled down her cheek, and then she collapsed, right there at the podium, flat to the floor. The room exploded in chaos. People shouted. Someone dialed 911. Others stood frozen, unsure whether to help. And as paramedics rushed through the door, one of Marlene's own board members, Tanya, stepped forward, shaking. She has a safe, she whispered, in her house locked with documents. What kind of documents? I asked. Tanya looked pale. Illegal stuff. Fraud. She's been stealing from the HOA for years, and I helped her hide it. Ray put a hand on my shoulder. You were right, Jake. This wasn't just about a gate, and I knew then we had only scratched the surface because whatever was in that safe was going to bring everything crashing down. The ambulance pulled away, its siren howling through the clear ridge night as it carried Marlene toward the hospital. The crowd slowly dispersed from the community center, whispering and shaking their heads, stunned by what they had just seen. But I didn't move. I stood frozen in place, the echo of Tanya's words bouncing around in my skull. She has a safe with illegal stuff. Ray, Ellie, and I exchanged a look. Ellie was still filming, though her hands were shaking now. Y'all heard her, she said, her voice trembling. We need to find that safe before someone else does. Tanya looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyeliner had smudged from tears she didn't let fall. I'll take you, she whispered. She has no family. If I don't show you now, someone else will clean it out by morning. I turned to Ray. You in? He didn't even answer, just cracked his knuckles and nodded. We left the community center quietly. Tanya climbed into her small black Prius, and we followed behind in Ray's pickup. Ellie, despite my protest, rode with us, camera rolling the whole way. Clear Ridge was still that night, unnervingly quiet. Porch lights flickered, dogs barked in the distance, and the wind carried a slight chill that hinted a storm might be brewing, literally and otherwise. Marlene's house sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac, a two-story colonial with navy shutters, a manicured lawn, and not a single weed in sight. Even her trash cans were perfectly aligned. "This it?" Rye muttered, parking across the street. "Yep," Tanya said, already at the door. She never installed security cameras. Said she didn't want the HOA spying on her. Ironic. She pushed the door open. Inside, the place looked like a museum. Every picture frame was level, every book alphabetized, not a speck of dust on the furniture. "She kept the safe upstairs," Tanya whispered, pointing. "Inside the sewing room, closet to the left." We moved quietly, though no one was home. Still, it felt like walking through enemy territory. Ellie stayed downstairs, nervously watching through the blinds. Ray and I followed Tanya upstairs. We reached the sewing room, where lace curtains danced gently beside a half-open window. The closet door was ajar, and behind a stack of folded quilts sat an old wall safe. Square, gray, and ominous. "She changed the code monthly," Tanya said, kneeling beside it. "But I know her patterns, always something meaningful." She tried a combination. A 704, beep, green light, the safe clicked. Rye let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be." Inside were folders, dozens of them. Some labeled legal donations, property adjustments, member dues, private settlements. I grabbed a stack at random and opened them. Photos, receipts, bank statements, even fake letters signed in the name of long, dead HOA members. "She created fake complaints," I said aloud, flipping through. "Filed them against properties so she could impose fines." Rye held up another file. "And here's where that money went. Private accounts, some, offshore." Tanya leaned against the wall, pale. I helped her collect them. I thought it was just shady politics. I didn't know it was all fake, but the worst was yet to come. At the bottom of the safe was a black binder labeled Confidential Ranch Dispute. I opened it slowly. Inside were aerial photos of my property, GPS maps, and a list titled Strategies for Acquisition. "She wanted your land," Ray muttered, "and was going to take it by force," I whispered. One line was highlighted in red ink. Phase 3, forced sale via property devaluation plus criminal claim. "She planned the bulldozer," Tanya said softly. "She hired the guy who drove it, paid him under the table." I stared at the binder, my hands going cold. She was trying to frame me, to drive down the property value, make me look unstable so she could seize the land under HOA legal loopholes. Ellie's voice called up the stairs. "Uncle Jake, someone's outside." We flew down to the living room. Through the front window, headlights lit up the street. Not police, not neighbors. A black SUV rolled to a stop across the street. Two men in dark clothes stepped out. One spoke into a walkie-talkie. The other reached under his jacket. My heart leapt. "Get away from the window," I snapped. Ray hit the lights. Tanya crouched behind the couch. Ellie slipped upstairs out of sight. "What the heck is this?" Rye whispered. "Who are these guys?" I peeked again. The man with the walkie-talkie was pointing at the house. The second man walked up the driveway. Then, tap, tap, tap. He knocked on the front door hard. I held my breath. The knock came again, then silence. Ellie texted me from upstairs. "There's a third guy in the backyard," Ray whispered. "We need to leave, now." Tanya looked like she might faint. "They're her cleanup crew," she mentioned them once. "If anything ever went wrong, they'd handle the problem." "She hired goons," I hissed. "This lady is nuts." The front doorknob started to rattle. We moved quickly out the back through the kitchen, slipping over the fence into the neighbor's yard. From there, we sprinted across a field to Ray's truck. Ellie was already inside, breathless and shaking. I hit the gas. The SUV didn't follow, but we didn't go back to the ranch. We went straight to Sheriff Bill. He listened to everything in the new pasture. The safe, the binder, the goons. He had the documents photocopied, stamped, and secured in evidence folders before we finished our first cup of station coffee. "You've just blown the roof off this thing," he said, exhaling hard. "I think she was trying to flip my land for resale," I said. "That's why she wanted it so badly." "Not just that," he replied. "According to this, she was working with a shady developer from Phoenix. They were trying to expand the HOA territory. Your ranch was the crown jewel." Ray chuckled. "Guess she didn't expect the tractor to push back." Bill smiled grimly. You did more than push back. You exposed a syndicate of HOA abuse. She's going down, Jake, and so are the people helping her. Tanya was placed under protective witness status that night. Gerald was still in the hospital but recovering. Marlene was being held for medical evaluation. And me? I went back to the ranch. It was almost sunrise. I walked to the front gate, what was left of it. The twisted metal was still scattered like bones, and I knew exactly what I'd do next. The following weekend, the townsfolk gathered near my property. Ellie had organized it. She called it Gate Day. People brought wood, tools, snacks. Kids painted signs. A few old-timers brought chairs and watched the show like it was a parade. Together, we rebuilt the gate, bigger, taller, brighter than ever. Ray carved a sign into the top beam, Freeland not for sale. Ellie filmed the whole thing, and her video became a nationwide sensation. Sheriff Bill made a statement that same day, promising a full investigation into HOA corruption and announcing that all illegal fines issued by Marlene's administration would be nullified. As the sun dipped low, casting gold over the finished gate, I sat on the porch with Duke in my lap, watching the crowd slowly trickle home. We weren't done yet, because somewhere out there, those cleanup men were still on the loose. And I had a feeling Marlene wasn't quite finished with me either. It was 2 weeks after Gate Day. The ranch was quiet again, the kind of quiet you only get when you've earned it. The fence was standing tall and proud. Duke was napping under the porch swing, and Ellie was finally getting some sleep without jumping at every twig snap. But I couldn't relax, not yet. Sheriff Bill had put out a warrant for Marlene's arrest the day after her discharge from the hospital. The charges were serious: conspiracy to commit fraud, property destruction, illegal use of HOA funds, and harassment. But she had vanished, just disappeared. Her house was empty, phone lines cut, credit cards inactive. She'd slipped through the cracks like a ghost. And those cleanup men, also gone. No fingerprints, no security footage, just tire tracks and empty threats left behind. I didn't sleep much. Every night I sat on the porch with my shotgun across my lap, watching the tree like a hawk. Ray stayed over most nights. He never said it, but I could tell he was just as on edge. Then one morning, it happened. The letter. No stamp, no address, just a folded envelope tucked into the latch of the new gate. I opened it slowly inside a single sentence in neat handwriting. The land doesn't belong to you. You just borrowed it. There was no signature. I felt the burn of old anger crawl up my chest. I marched into the house and showed Ray. He read it once, then again, slower. "That ain't a threat," he said. "That's a warning." Ellie walked in, phone in hand. "Guys, you need to see this." She turned the screen toward us. It was a video, grainy, low light. It showed my barn, filmed from a distance at night. In the corner of the frame, a shadow moved. Broad shoulders, slow steps, a man in dark clothes dragging something heavy into the side of the barn. Then the screen cut to black. "Where'd you get this?" I asked. "My DMs," Ellie said. "Anonymous account, no name, just the video. Sent 30 minutes ago." Rye grabbed his jacket. "We're checking the barn now." The air was tense as we crossed the pasture, our boots crunching in the dew-soaked grass. Duke followed close, ears perked. We reached the barn just as the sun broke the horizon. Everything looked normal at first, but then we saw it. The lock on the side door was snapped. Clean break, almost surgical. Ray and I looked at each other. Then I pushed the door open. It creaked slow and stiff. Inside, the morning light streamed through gaps in the roof. Dust danced in the beams. Bales of hay lined the walls, and the tractor sat silent in the center. Nothing looked out of place, but the smell hit us fast. Fuel, fresh, sharp. Ray walked toward the far corner, near the feed barrels. "Jake," he said, "back here." I joined him. There, half buried behind a loose panel, was a small metal canister. Red, unmarked. I recognized it instantly. Diesel. Next to it, a rag. Next to that, a box of matches. Ray stared at it, stunned. They were going to burn it. Burn your barn down. "Not just burn it," I said slowly. "They were going to make it look like an accident, something to discredit me." We heard a noise, then faint outside, a footstep, then another. Duke growled low and deep. Ray motioned toward the side exit. "Out now." We slipped around the back of the barn, keeping low. Ellie had called Sheriff Bill the second we left the house. I texted her, "Stay inside, lock doors." Then just as we reached the fence line, crack. A shot rang out. A bullet slammed into the gate post inches from Ray's head. We dropped. Duke barked furiously, running in circles. A second shot hit the barn's roof, then silence. Ray pulled me by the collar behind the water tank. "Sniper," he muttered, "somewhere on the ridge. Who the hell brings a sniper to a ranch gate dispute?" "Someone who's losing control." We peeked from cover. Nothing moved. Then far in the distance, a black SUV tore away down the dirt road. Wheels spitting gravel. "They were watching," I said, waiting for us to find it, then tried to shut us up. Bill arrived 7 minutes later. We showed him the fuel, the matches, the video, and the bullet holes. He didn't say much, just ran his hand down his face inside. "This ain't HOA business anymore," he said. "This is federal." That night, under the protection of sheriffs, deputies, and floodlights, I gave my first formal testimony to a federal investigator. The FBI had picked up the case. Turns out Marlene had ties to more than just HOA corruption. She was part of a developer scheme out of Phoenix, buying land under false claims, inflating fines, manipulating property sales, and laundering the profits through shell companies. They had used the HOA as a front. The bulldozer just one of many tools. She wasn't alone, and the people behind her dangerous. "You're a loose end now," the agent told me, "but you're also our best witness." Ellie posted a final video that night. She explained everything from the red gate to the bulldozer to the break-ins, the safe, and the sniper. It was raw, emotional, powerful. Within hours, national media picked it up. Small-town rancher uncovers HOA crime syndicate. We were on the front page of every social feed by morning. But I didn't care about going viral anymore. I cared about peace and justice. 3 days later, they found her. Marlene Crowley hiding in a motorhome at a KOA campsite near the Utah border. Fake IDs, burner phones, a suitcase full of HOA cash. When they arrested her, she asked one thing. "Did he repaint the gate?" The officer just laughed. The trial was fast-tracked. Marlene pled guilty to multiple charges. Her co-conspirators were named one by one. The HOA was dissolved under emergency order, and new laws were passed locally to prevent such abuse of power again. Tanya and Gerald testified. So did I. When I left that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real, quiet, earned peace. The ranch is calm now. No more strangers, no more letters, no more sleepless nights. Ray's back to tending his garden. Ellie's working on a short documentary titled The Gate War. And me? Well, I'm sitting here on my porch again, Duke at my feet, coffee in hand, staring at that same gate. Still bright red, still bold, still mine. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do in a quiet neighborhood is stand your ground and paint your gate the color you want. 6 months later, the red gate still stands. Its color is a little faded now, thanks to the relentless Arizona sun, but I haven't touched it. I don't plan to. It's not just paint anymore. It's a symbol, a reminder that standing your ground, even when the world is trying to push you down, is always worth it. The ranch has returned to its rhythm. Mornings are filled with the sound of chickens. Duke barking at tumbleweeds. Dolores got a plaque from the county thanking her for historical contributions to boundary record keeping. She laughed so hard when she read it she nearly fell off her porch swing. And me, I finally sleep again. But let me tell you what happened the last time I ever saw Marlene Crowley. Yes, the last time. It was unexpected. I was in town grabbing a replacement belt for the mower at the local hardware store. I stepped out with a bag in one hand and a soda in the other when I saw her. She looked different, worn, tired. Her once perfect hair was tied back in a plain knot, her face bare of makeup. No clipboard, no papers, just her and a pair of plastic bags from the dollar store. She spotted me, froze for a moment. Neither of us moved. Then she walked over. "Marlene," I said with a nod. She looked at the ground. "Jake, how are you?" She gave a bitter chuckle. "That's a loaded question, isn't it?" I didn't answer. She stared at her hands, then finally looked up. I lost everything, she said quietly. My house, my reputation, my job. The HOA is gone. I'm not even allowed to rent property in the county anymore. I waited. You humiliated me, she said, though not with anger, just truth. You tried to burn my barn down, sent someone to shoot at me, I said back. She nodded. Yeah, I know. We stood in silence. Finally, she said, you were right. The land wasn't mine to control. It wasn't anyone's. I needed something that made me feel important. That hit me harder than I expected. You ever think, I said softly, that maybe being kind would have made you more important than any title ever could? She blinked fast, like she was trying not to cry. I'll leave now, she said, turning to walk away. But before she reached the edge of the parking lot, she stopped. I watched the video, she said over her shoulder. I raised an eyebrow. Ellie's documentary, she clarified, The Gate War. And then she said something I never expected. It's a good story. Then she got into a battered gray sedan and drove off. I never saw her again. Ellie's documentary went on to win a regional award. She got invited to speak at local colleges about online storytelling, and she used the prize money to build a recording studio in our old storage room. Ray says, I'm famous now. I say, I'm just the guy who painted a gate and told the truth. But the town changed. People started talking more openly about how small abuses of power can grow into something dangerous. They revised the HOA laws, added a hotline for property disputes, and even renamed the park at the end of the street, Harmon Square. I cried when I saw the sign Duke peed on it. Felt about right. Sometimes at sunset, I sit on the porch and stare out at the road where it all started. Where Marlene first stood screaming about gate color. Where a tractor nearly rolled over her stilettos. Where a whole neighborhood realized that one red gate could stand for something a lot bigger than just paint. Ellie joined me one evening. She sat down with her laptop scrolling through messages from people all over the country. This one's from Michigan, she said. Guy says his HOA tried to find him for having too many sunflowers. Said after watching our video he fought it and won. I smiled. You started something, Uncle Jake? No, I said, sipping my coffee. We did. And so that's the story about a man, a gate, a paintbrush, and a bulldozer. About corruption, courage, and the unexpected strength of a small-town rancher with nothing to lose and everything to defend. About the moment when standing still meant pushing back, and how sometimes the only thing crazier than a red gate is what people will do to stop you from having one. Thanks for listening. And if you ever find yourself up against a Marlene, remember, you don't need to shout. You don't need to fight dirty. You don't even need to raise your voice. Just stand your ground. Stay kind. And never ever repaint your gate for someone else's comfort. Not when red looks that good on you.